My sister stole my wedding dress and wore it first. I sued her for $50K. They're better off without you, Natalie. You'll never see them again. That text message arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was sitting in my family law attorney's office, going over custody documentation. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant in Denver, Colorado. At that moment, staring at those words on my phone screen, I knew my two children, Emma, 8, and Lucas, 6, had been taken by my ex-mother-in-law, Patricia Henley. What Patricia didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life by targeting someone who specializes in following paper trails and building airtight cases. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. Instead, I handed my phone to my attorney, Sarah Mitchell, and said calmly, "We need to call the FBI immediately. This just became a federal kidnapping case." The custody battle with my ex-husband, Derek, had been brutal, but I thought the worst was behind us. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago, and we were supposed to have joint custody. What I hadn't anticipated was Patricia's level of involvement, or her complete disregard for federal law. Let me back up and explain how we got here. Derek and I met in college 12 years ago. He was studying business. I was working toward my accounting degree with a specialization in forensic investigation. We seemed like a perfect match. He was charming and ambitious. I was methodical and supportive. We married after graduation, and I helped him start his construction business while building my career at Morrison & Associates, one of Denver's top forensic accounting firms. The problem started 3 years ago when Derek's business began struggling. I offered to help with the books, but he refused, saying his mother, Patricia, a retired bookkeeper, was handling everything. That should have been my first red flag. Patricia had always been controlling, but she insisted she was just trying to help her son succeed. I threw myself into my work instead, becoming one of the youngest senior forensic accountants at my firm. I specialized in tracking hidden assets in divorce cases and corporate fraud investigations. The irony wasn't lost on me later. The marriage deteriorated rapidly. Derek became distant, working late constantly, and when he was home, he was either on the phone with his mother or talking about how I didn't understand the construction business. Patricia's visits became more frequent, and I noticed she treated me like an outsider in my own home. The breaking point came 18 months ago when I discovered Derek had been hiding money. Not from the IRS, from me. While doing our taxes, I found discrepancies between what he claimed the business earned and what our bank statements showed. When I confronted him, he exploded, accusing me of not trusting him. Patricia, who happened to be there for dinner, sided with him completely. "Derek doesn't need to justify his business decisions to you, Natalie," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Maybe if you spent more time supporting your husband instead of playing detective, you'd understand." That's when something clicked. I wasn't playing detective, I was being a forensic accountant. And my instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. I filed for divorce 3 months later. During the discovery process, my own professional skills proved invaluable. I found hidden accounts, unreported income, and a systematic pattern of financial deception that Derek and Patricia had been running for years. Derek's construction business was actually quite successful. They'd just been hiding assets in Patricia's name to avoid taxes and potential divorce settlements. The custody battle was vicious. Patricia hired Derek, an expensive attorney, and testified against me, painting me as a workaholic who prioritized career over family. She claimed I was emotionally unstable and vindictive, using my forensic investigation of Derek's finances as evidence of my suspicious nature. What they didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, every conversation, every interaction, every instance of Patricia undermining my parenting or coaching the children to prefer their father. My professional training had taught me that documentation wins cases, and I was building a comprehensive file. The judge initially granted joint custody, but I could see the writing on the wall. Patricia had been systematically poisoning Derek against me, and now she was working on the children. She would take them for special grandmother days during Derek's custody time and return them full of stories about how much happier they'd be living with Daddy and Grandma Patricia full-time. 3 weeks before the kidnapping incident, I had filed a motion to modify the custody arrangement, citing Patricia's inappropriate involvement and requesting supervised visitation only. I had evidence of her coaching the children, attempting to turn them against me, and interfering with my parental relationship. The hearing was scheduled for the following month. Patricia clearly decided not to wait for the legal process. On that Tuesday morning, Derek was supposed to drop the kids at school and pick them up for his custody day. When the school called me at 2 p.m. to say Emma and Lucas never arrived, I immediately tried calling Derek. His phone went straight to voicemail. I called Patricia's house. No answer. I called Derek's business number. His foreman said he hadn't seen Derek all day and seemed genuinely confused. That's when the text arrived. Within 30 minutes of contacting the FBI, Special Agent Michael Chen was in my attorney's office. I had already prepared a comprehensive file: custody orders, communication logs, financial records showing Patricia's control over Derek, and documented instances of her interference in the custody arrangement. "Mrs. Brooks," Agent Chen said, reviewing my documentation, "this is exactly the kind of detailed record-keeping that makes these cases solvable. Most parents in your situation are too emotional to think this systematically." "Agent Chen," I replied, "I'm a forensic accountant. Documentation is what I do for a living. And I've been treating this custody situation like a case file for months." He smiled grimly. "That might just save your children." The FBI moved fast. Patricia's phone records showed she had been in contact with Derek constantly over the past week. Credit card records, which I helped them interpret and trace, showed purchases of camping gear, gas station stops, and a pattern moving steadily northeast toward the Wyoming border. But here's where Patricia made her second critical mistake. She used her debit card at a grocery store in Cheyenne, Wyoming at 8:23 p.m. that night. The store had security cameras, and she was clearly visible with Emma and Lucas. "She's heading for her sister's cabin in Montana," I told Agent Chen. "I remember Derek mentioning it during our marriage. Patricia's sister Ruth owns property near Glacier National Park. Patricia probably thinks it's the perfect place to hide." Agent Chen looked impressed. "How do you remember that?" "Because I remember everything that might be relevant to a case. And I've been treating my marriage's breakdown like a case for 2 years. I was right. By coordinating with local law enforcement. In Montana, the FBI tracked Patricia's cell phone to a remote cabin outside Whitefish. She had crossed state lines with someone else's children, making it a federal kidnapping case punishable by up to 20 years in prison. The arrest happened at 6 a.m. the next morning. Patricia had apparently convinced Derek this was a brilliant plan to protect the children from their unstable mother. She told him I would never find them, and eventually I'd give up my parental rights. She found out exactly how wrong she was when FBI agents surrounded the cabin. According to the arrest report, Patricia's first words were, "You can't do this. I'm protecting these children from their mother." Her second statement was, "Derek had no idea. This was all my plan." Even in custody, she was still trying to control the narrative, but she had just confessed to federal kidnapping and implicated herself as the mastermind. Derek, to his minimal credit, seemed genuinely shocked by the FBI presence. The agents reported that he kept saying, "My mom said this was legal. She said we had a right to protect the kids." At 34 years old, Derek was still letting his mother make his major life decisions, and this time, it destroyed both of their lives. Emma and Lucas were found safe, but confused. They told investigators that Grandma Patricia said Mommy was sick and couldn't take care of them anymore, and that they were going to live in the mountains where Mommy couldn't find them. Hearing that broke my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. Patricia had been emotionally manipulating my children, and now I had federal agents as witnesses to her tactics. The legal consequences unfolded quickly. Patricia was charged with federal kidnapping, child endangerment, and conspiracy. Derek was charged as an accessory and with parental kidnapping. Both were denied bail. Patricia because she had demonstrated clear flight risk and intent to permanently relocate the children. Derek because he had actively participated in violating a custody order. But the story gets better. During the federal investigation, Agent Chen asked me to help analyze Patricia's financial records to understand how she had funded this kidnapping scheme. What we found was far more extensive than anyone expected. Patricia had been embezzling from Derek's construction business for years. She had created false vendor accounts, inflated material costs, and systematically stolen over $340,000. Derek's business wasn't just successful. It was extremely profitable. Patricia had been siphoning profits into her own accounts while claiming the business was struggling. Derek had no idea? I asked Agent Chen while reviewing the financial evidence. Either he's the most oblivious business owner in Colorado, or he was willfully blind because it benefited him financially, Agent Chen replied. Either way, the IRS is very interested in their unreported income and tax evasion. This is where my professional expertise became crucial. I volunteered to assist the federal investigation pro bono, helping trace the money Patricia had stolen and hidden. What we uncovered was a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that had been running for over 8 years. Patricia had been living off stolen money while playing the role of the concerned grandmother and helpful mother. She had used Derek's business as her personal bank account, and when she realized the custody battle might expose her financial crimes, she decided kidnapping was preferable to federal prison. She was wrong about that calculation. The federal prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez, was somebody I had worked with on previous corporate fraud cases. When she saw my analysis of Patricia's embezzlement scheme, she smiled. Natalie, Patricia picked the wrong forensic accountant to mess with. This financial evidence is bulletproof. The trial was mercifully quick. Patricia's own text messages, the FBI arrest at the cabin, her recorded confession, and the financial evidence I had compiled created an overwhelming case. Her defense attorney tried to claim she was protecting the children from an unstable mother, but that argument crumbled when the prosecution presented my custody evaluation report, my professional references, and testimony from the children's teachers about their well-being in my care. Derek's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, claiming he was manipulated by his mother. The prosecution agreed to reduce his charges in exchange for full cooperation and testimony against Patricia. During his testimony, Derek finally admitted the truth. My mother controlled everything: the business, my finances, my decisions about the kids. She convinced me that Natalie was trying to destroy our family, but really, my mom was the one destroying everything. Too little, too late. Patricia was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for kidnapping, plus 5 additional years for the embezzlement charges. The judge noted that her systematic manipulation of family relationships and willingness to traumatize children for personal gain warranted the maximum sentence. Derek received 3 years, with the possibility of parole after 18 months, if he completed counseling and paid full restitution to his business. But the best part was still coming. With Derek facing prison and Patricia's embezzlement exposed, Derek's construction business needed immediate financial management to survive. The court appointed me as the interim financial administrator, given my forensic accounting background and intimate knowledge of the company's real financial situation. I discovered that without Patricia's embezzlement, Derek's business was actually worth over $1.2 million. Derek owed back taxes on the unreported income, legal fees for his criminal defense, and restitution payments. He needed money fast. I offered to buy the business for $800,000, a fair price considering his legal debts and need for immediate liquidity. Derek's attorney recommended he accept. Natalie, Derek said during the business transfer meeting, I'm sorry about everything. My mom convinced me you were the enemy, but you were the only one trying to build something real. I looked at my ex-husband, now a convicted felon facing prison time, and felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Derek, your choices put our children in danger. I can forgive a lot of things, but I can't forget that Emma and Lucas were terrified because you and your mother decided to play God with their lives. The custody modification was a formality after the kidnapping conviction. I was granted full physical custody with supervised visitation for Derek once he's released from prison. Patricia's parental rights were completely terminated, and she's prohibited from any contact with Emma or Lucas until they're adults, if they choose to have contact then. The restraining order is comprehensive. Patricia cannot contact me, my children, or come within 500 feet of our home, their schools, or my business. Violation would result in additional federal charges. 6 months later, I'm running a successful construction business. My children are back in therapy working through the trauma Patricia caused, and we're rebuilding our sense of security and trust. Emma asked me recently, Mommy, why did Grandma Patricia lie to us? I told her, sometimes people make very bad choices because they care more about getting their way than about doing what's right. But the important thing is that you and Lucas are safe and nobody can take you away from me again. The business is thriving under proper financial management. Without Patricia's embezzlement, we've been able to expand, hire more employees, and build the kind of company Derek always claimed he wanted. The irony is that Patricia's greed prevented the very success she claimed to be protecting. I kept Derek's business name, Henley Construction, but added a subtitle, Under New Management. It seemed appropriate. Derek writes to the children occasionally from prison. I read every letter first, and so far, they've been appropriate expressions of remorse and love. Emma and Lucas can decide when they're older whether they want a relationship with their father, but they'll make that choice with full knowledge of what happened and why. Patricia has written several letters that I've forwarded unopened to my attorney. I have no interest in her manipulation attempts, and the restraining order prohibits her from contacting us anyway. Each letter she sends creates a potential violation for the prosecutors to consider. The financial restitution has been Enlightening. Patricia must pay back the $340,000 she embezzled, plus interest and penalties. From federal prison, where she earns 0.23 per hour in the laundry facility, this will take approximately 847 years at her current rate. Her sister Ruth, who owned the Montana cabin, cooperated fully with the investigation once she learned Patricia had lied about having permission to take the children. Ruth sent me a heartfelt apology letter and a $500 contribution to the children's college fund. I should have called you the moment they showed up, she wrote. Patricia told me Derek had won full custody, but I should have verified that myself. The children's therapy has been crucial. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, their child psychologist, says, Emma and Lucas are recovering well but need consistent reassurance that they're safe. They've both had nightmares about being taken away again, but the frequency is decreasing. The fact that you documented everything and worked with law enforcement so effectively helped them feel protected, Dr. Walsh told me. Children need to know that adults can keep them safe, and you proved that conclusively. I've had to explain to them, in age-appropriate terms, that Grandma Patricia broke very serious laws and hurt their family. Emma, who's always been perceptive, said, She was mean to you, Mommy, and she scared us. I'm glad the police caught her. Lucas, who's younger, mostly just wanted to know if the bad grandma can come back. I assured him that she cannot. The professional impact has been unexpected, but positive. My work on this case, helping federal investigators trace financial crimes while dealing with a personal crisis, has enhanced my reputation in the forensic accounting field. I've been asked to speak at conferences about the intersection of family law and financial crimes. You turned your worst personal experience into professional excellence, my boss David Morrison told me. That takes remarkable composure and skill. The speaking engagements have been therapeutic in their own way. I talk to other parents, attorneys, and financial professionals about recognizing signs of financial manipulation in family situations. Patricia's embezzlement scheme was sophisticated, but it had patterns that trained investigators can spot. I always end these presentations with the same advice. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember that patient, methodical investigation will always defeat impulsive emotional manipulation. Recently, I received a letter from Agent Chen, who has been promoted to supervise the FBI's white-collar crime division in Colorado. Mrs. Brooks, your assistance on the Henley case was exemplary. Your professionalism and detailed preparation made a complex investigation straightforward. Thank you for your service to justice. The letter is framed in my office, right next to my forensic accounting certification, and a picture of Emma and Lucas at their school's science fair. 1 year after the kidnapping, I can honestly say we're not just surviving, we're thriving. The construction business employs 12 people and has a 6-month project backlog. Emma and Lucas are excelling in school, and we've developed new traditions and routines that feel stable and joyful. I'm dating again, carefully and with full eye. Background checks, because once a forensic accountant, always a forensic accountant. The children have met my boyfriend James twice, and he understands that their safety and stability are non-negotiable priorities. Patricia has 18 months left on her sentence, assuming good behavior. Derek will be eligible for parole in 6 months. The children ask about him occasionally, and I'm honest that he made bad choices, but that people can change and improve. Whether Derek can actually change remains to be seen. Whether Patricia can change is irrelevant. She'll have no opportunity to impact our lives again. The most important lesson I've learned is that sometimes the skills that make you good at your job are exactly the skills you need to protect your family. My methodical, documentation-focused, evidence-based approach to problems didn't just solve this crisis. It prevented Patricia from destroying our lives. Emma told me recently, Mommy, you're like a detective, but for money. That's exactly right. Sweetheart. And that's how Mommy knew how to keep you and Lucas safe. I think about Patricia sometimes, folding laundry in federal prison, wondering how her brilliant plan went so wrong so fast. She underestimated me completely. She saw a working mother going through a difficult divorce and assumed I was vulnerable and disorganized. What she actually found was a forensic accountant with 12 years of experience building airtight cases against people who think they're smarter than the law. Patricia gambled our children's safety and her own freedom on the assumption that I wouldn't be able to find them or prove what they had done. She lost that bet spectacularly. The restraining order is permanent. The kidnapping conviction is on her record forever. The embezzlement restitution will follow her for decades. And most importantly, Emma and Lucas are safe, happy, and know they never have to see her again unless they choose to as adults. Sometimes karma needs a little help from federal law enforcement and a really good forensic accountant. But justice, when it finally arrives, is absolutely worth the wait.